There's been a big shift in Apple's paywall policies. Let's talk about it. A recent US court ruling now requires Apple to let apps link out to external payment options. That means more control over your paywall, better pricing flexibility, and a smoother experience between your app and web products. Adapty is rolling out support for exactly this. You can now use our SDK to link to a web payment flow, have your users check out with Apple Pay, and when they return to your app, premium access will be instantly unlocked. In this video, I'll walk you through exactly how to set it up, step by step. Let's jump in. All right, to set up your web payment workflow, the first thing that you're going to want to do is go fetch your Stripe API keys from your Stripe dashboard. So you can see on the screen here, I've got a link out to the documentation from Stripe on API keys. It really shows you exactly where you need to go to find them. So I'll link this in the description box below as well. But really, you're going to go fetch your sandbox keys and also your production keys. You'll notice here that there is both a secret key and a publishable key. You're going to want both of those for each of the two environments, sandbox and production. So just grab those from your dashboard in Stripe and just follow these directions to do that. And then hang on to those keys. We're going to need them in just a minute when we sign in to Adapty and we set up the web payment flow. The next thing that you're going to need to do is make sure that your Adapty SDK has been updated to the latest version. So in your iOS app, you want to make sure that you're on 3.6.0 of the Adapty SDK. Here on the GitHub page, you can see we released that recently. And so just make sure that you have updated to 3.6.0. If you're using Swift Package Manager, that's pretty easy. You can just go to the package in Xcode, right-click and say Update Package, and it should go fetch the latest one. But just make sure that before you do anything else with your code, that you've updated to 3.6.0. It contains important changes to enable this kind of web flow in the paywalls. Your next step is to go into the Adapty dashboard and decide how you want to set up your web paywall experience. So your options are to either create a brand new paywall inside Adapty and connect it to your web paywall checkout system, or you can use an existing paywall and just simply add a button to give the users option to maybe do in-app purchase and web checkout if they like. That's what we're going to do here. So if we look at Movie Mania's standard paywall, we can click into this and then see that with Paywall Builder, we've previously built a paywall for this thing. And so you can see it's pretty standard. We just this was from a tutorial. We just used sort of a standard template. And so you can see we've got some calls to action here, a button, right? Pricing, things like that. So pretty standard as far as paywall design is concerned. Easy to do in Paywall Builder, and it's already done. So we're going to take this paywall and modify it to include an additional option, which would be to allow the users to check out through the web. To be able to do that, though, we have to set up the web paywall first. So you'll notice here, if you're running the latest version of the Adapty dashboard, which if for some reason you don't see this, just simply refresh your page and you should see that change. There's now a web paywall tab right here. And so it gives you some directions on what you need to do in order to set this up. There's actually a 4-step process that we walk you through. So the first thing is going to be to actually create a web paywall experience. And that's done in a bit of a different interface. So when you click on this button, it's going to take you there. We'll go ahead and do that now. And it takes you to a different paywall interface where we're going to create, instead of a native paywall that runs inside of the app, we're going to run a web paywall. But before we even get to that, we need to make sure that the Stripe connection is configured. So those keys that we talked about a few minutes ago, make sure you have those handy. You're going to go over here to Settings and then the Stripe button. And then you're going to put in your public and secret keys. You can see there's 4 of them, 2 of each, for the sandbox and production environments. So go ahead and take those keys that you pulled out of your Stripe account and put them here and just put all 4 of them in and then hit Save Changes. And that will connect this web checkout system with your existing Stripe account. If you already have products set up in there, that's great. You're good to go. If you don't have products, you're going to want to go into your Stripe account and set up products that look similar probably to your in-app purchase products that you've got with Apple, but that is not going to sort of come for free. You need to go into Stripe and do that. And there's extensive documentation on Stripe's website that'll help you get those products set up. All right, so once you enter your API keys into the settings for the web paywalls, you should see the Stripe logo light up. That tells you that the API keys have been added and they've been saved. If you go back over to the paywall screen, if you've never created a paywall before, you're going to see just a blank screen with a big button just to create one. Go ahead and click that, or you can use the Create Paywall button in the upper right corner to make a new paywall. And you're going to want to enter a paywall name. something that makes sense to you, just like you do when you make a paywall inside of Adapty, like a paywall builder paywall. I'm going to hit save on that, and that will then open up the paywall for you to take a look at. I've created one already here for our app Movie Mania. So you can see we've got, you should have a template as well. I started from a template and modified it. You should be in the same place, and you're welcome to change it however you like. So just to kind of give you a quick overview, we've got a price selection screen because we're offering both an annual plan and a monthly plan. And then we have checkout screens for each of those, and then a return to app screen. So we're going to go over each of these in detail, but just kind of give you an overview of what that looks like. Yours should look pretty similar. The colors and things might be different, but should look relatively similar. So what we're going to do here is set up a web-based paywall for our annual and monthly plans for Movie Mania. And with the annual plan, we're going to offer a 7-day trial. And with the monthly plan, we're just going to offer a straight normal subscription that starts immediately. So when you see these, if you add this in your list of products or you get it from the template, you have the ability to edit them. So you can click into them, and then you can see things like the title, the price, things like that. So you're able to change and edit all these values yourself. They're not going to, in the designer, not going to inherit from the actual product. So you just want to enter them manually. As far as what you see here, you can add or remove anything that you like. So we've got a pretty standard paywall set up here. We've got annual plan, the price per day, and then the fact that this one has a free 7-day trial on it. We're putting a badge there. And then with monthly plan, it's just kind of a regular price. So this is a picker. This allows you to, it's radio buttons that allows you to pick one or the other. And what happens with the continue button is it's set up to be a dynamic navigate on press. So when you tap that button, it's going to navigate you dynamically using the prices that you see here. And so for the annual plan, it's going to take you to the checkout annual, and for the monthly plan, it's going to take you to the checkout monthly. So I've renamed these so that they match, and that's how we get it to go to one or the other screen. On the checkout page, we've got a pretty simple setup of the price. In this case, since this is the annual plan and we're offering a free trial, we're going to indicate that as well and say that your price today is going to be $0. And then you have a continue button. This purple box is just here as a reminder for all of you out there to make sure that you set up your payment processing before you get too far with this paywall design. This whole system will not work if you don't have something connected. So make sure you connect Stripe or Paddle or one of the supported payment processors before you continue. This block is set up to be non-visible, so that means that runtime, when you run this, you're not going to see this purple block. But really, it's just from us in Adapty to you as developers as kind of a reminder to do that step. And if you want, you can simply just delete it from your screen, and then it's totally gone. So if we look down here at the Continue with Apple Pay button, we can see that we need to make a couple of setting changes here. So Sandbox and Production are your two environments that you can choose from for subscriptions. For purposes of today, in this example, in this tutorial, we're going to work with the Sandbox, but what you can do is you can set your subscriptions for both Sandbox and Production in one go, and then that way you can test it in Sandbox, and you can also make it go live in Production, use it for real as well. So we're going to pick from the Sandbox here, and we're going to choose our integration test. We have a bunch of prices in here because we do a lot of testing, and they're not going to quite match up with what I've been talking about, but it does, purposes of the example doesn't matter. You're going to pick the subscription that makes sense for whatever you're setting up here. So just make sure you pick the right one. And then product type needs to be free trial to subscription. That's what we're offering in this case. So we're going to choose that as the product type. And then again, if you were using this for real and you wanted to bring it to production, you'd also want to set up your subscriptions for production as well for that button. And then over in the monthly checkout, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go to the subscription sandbox and choose the other one that's here, which is actually technically a weekly subscription. But again, for purposes of this example, just pick the one that makes sense for you. And then same deal up here. We're going to choose just subscription for product type rather than free trial, because in this case, it's just a regular subscription. We're not going to be doing any kind of free trial for this one. So with those set, now we've connected the two Apple Pay buttons with the appropriate subscription products that exist inside of Stripe. And that's really how that connection gets made and how we know what to charge the user for when they hit the button. So they're going to do that. And then in both cases, these checkout screens are designed very similarly. So in both cases, you can see for the actions that occur with the Apple Pay button is that when payment succeeds, we're going to navigate to this destination, which is this final screen, return to app. And that's true for both of these. So both buttons do the same thing. they just take you to that fourth return to app screen. So this one is hopefully fairly self-explanatory. It's just kind of telling the customer that the payment has been successful and that they need to return to the app in order to use their subscription. So the Adapty SDK and all the integration is going to connect these events together, even though one's happening on the web, and then of course we've got the app experience. They're going to be able to use that subscription inside their Adapty SDK-backed app, right? So you have kind of two options here. You can do what we're doing here, or you can also dynamically link back into your app and deep link in. So I will show that later in the tutorial as an optional thing that you can do if you like. But kind of by default, the one that we give you in the template is just a way to say, just kind of a static screen that says, please return to the app when you're done, which you can certainly do, and they can just jump back in the app and then it will work. So if you want that that deep linking, just look a little bit later in the tutorial and you can see how we do that. But at this point, we're basically done with the design of our web-based paywall. So I'm going to hit the little save icon up in the upper right corner. So when it comes to testing this thing, after you saved it, you basically have two options. You can either test it in a sandbox mode, or you can publish this entire paywall, and you can make it available in production and use it for real. So your options are here up in the upper right corner to preview it or to publish it. So if you're only interested in doing sandbox testing for now, I would use the preview. And then once you're ready to use this in production, then you can go ahead and publish this paywall and use it there. So for purposes, again, of the tutorial, we're going to follow the sandbox route. That's what we chose in our configuration for subscriptions. That's what we're going to do. But it's exactly the same thing if you're publishing it. So if we hit preview, we can see we get a little separate window that comes up and gives you a preview of the screen. And importantly, it also gives you then a link to the paywall flow that exists. So this is actually what you want to grab. I'm going to copy that entire URL, and we're going to use that for purposes of testing. But if you were going to publish this, you'd end up in the same place. You'd publish it. In fact, we can do that now. We'll publish this paywall, and it's going to have a little publishing icon up here telling you that it's doing so and giving you a little wait symbol. And once it's complete, it's going to give us the production URL of where this thing is going to live live on the web, and that would be the link that you would use for testing in production. So again, you can pick whichever one works best for you in the stage that you're at as far as implementation, and it's just a matter of which one you want to enter to use. So when we pop it up with the publish, we get the same thing. It's just a different URL, right? This is the live production URL. So it's just a matter of which link you want to use for testing. So I've already copied the preview one, so I'm going to use that. What we're going to do is go back over to our paywall here, and specifically into the web paywall tab inside of Adapty, and then you want to place the URL of the preview link or the production link, depending on which one you're testing, into this paste web paywall link. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in and save it. So in order to actually display a button on your Paywall Builder paywall to trigger the web flow, we're going to go back to the Builder tab and then choose Add Element from the left side. And we've actually added a specific web paywall button element that you can add. Go ahead and add that in, and I'm going to drag it down to, in my case, in my design, be below the in-app purchase subscription options. So now we have our two prices. We've got our subscribe button for paying within the app, and we also have a pay on web button. Our default text is pay on web. You can, of course, change it to anything that you like. You can add secondary text. You can change the font and colors, all those good things, just like any other paywall builder element. I'm just going to leave it like it is. I think pay on web makes sense. So what this is going to do is connect that link that we provided with this button. So when the user taps it, it's going to take them to the web paywall flow, and they can go ahead and complete their purchase that way. So now we've got two options. You can either do in-app purchase, or you can pay on the web, whichever one you like. At this point, I've made the changes. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and save and publish my paywall changes. So if this were a live paywall in a production application, which this is a demo app, so it's not, but if it were, these changes will be made immediately. And so we want to be aware of that, right? Make sure that you're not necessarily making changes to an existing paywall unless you're ready to actually deploy them. So now that we have everything set up on the paywall, we've got the button linked and all that good stuff. We have a couple more steps, and then we'll be all set. The next thing we want to make sure we've done is we need to set up our payment domains inside of Stripe. And there's specifically two that we need to enter there. So one is the payment domain that is established through your web paywalls. So if you go back to your web paywall screen and you go to settings and then domains, you'll see here a hosted subdomain, and that's the domain that we want to add to Stripe. So go ahead and grab this from your own portal and then go over to Stripe, and you want to set that up as a domain. So it's going to be inside your Stripe portal. It's going to be settings, payments, payment method domains. It's pretty straightforward. It's in there. There's also, as you can see on this screen, I have a link to a document explaining how this works from Stripe. So I'll include this in the description below as well, so you can follow along there. But you're just going to add that URL to your payment method domains. And the other one you want to add is just a sort of a fairly plain domain. It's just app.funnelfox.com. And again, I will put that in the description below, so you can just copy and paste it. But those two domains are what you need in order for Stripe to recognize these payment flows and authorize the purchases. So make sure that you do this step. It can kind of be done basically as soon as you have a single web paywall flow, you're going to end up with your hosted subdomain. So at any point, once you've got that, you can do this step. It doesn't have to be right in the point that we're doing it now, but just make sure that you get that done before you test. And then the last thing that we're going to do over here in the Adapty dashboard is we need to set up a placement for this paywall. So if you've used Paywall Builder paywalls before, you know that there's the paywall itself, the UI that's displayed, and then there's a placement, which is just simply an idea around where are you going to show that paywall within the flow of your actual application on a user device. And so that's going to happen inside placements. I've got a standard placement here for this paywall. So we're going to edit that in a moment. But before we do that, I need to go into the profiles and segments section, and then specifically into the segments tab, and create a new segment. And the reason why is because we need to pare this down a bit from every single person who might experience your app, right, and therefore see the paywall. We want to pare that down to just a subset of people, specifically people in the United States, because this ruling has only been made for the US. We also need to limit it to only iOS, because if you're using both, let's say, iOS and Android in your setup, we wouldn't want to enable this for Android because, again, it only applies to the App Store. And then lastly, we want to make sure that the minimum app version is sort of considered before we show a paywall, because there's going to be changes you're going to make to your own code, and we want to make sure that people don't see this paywall if, for example, they don't have the latest version of the Adapty SDK installed, and then, of course, none of this would work. So there's a couple things we need to limit in order to make sure that the right people see the specific paywall with the web flow. So I'm going to just call this, as far as segment name, US Web Checkout. That's what I'm calling it. You can call it whatever you like. And then you can put in a description if you want to. So that's our new segment. We're going to then add some attributes to make that the case. So we're going to say country first. So you're going to open up the Americas, and then you're going to go down and choose the United States specifically. And so now this paywall will only be shown to people who have their country settings set to the United States. And then the next one we're going to pick from is platform. So you can either search through, or you can just type in platform and choose it from the list. And we're going to pick platform iOS and iPadOS. Certainly you could pick macOS and visionOS as well if you like. Up to you to decide on that. We're just going to pick iOS and iPadOS though. So the last one we want to pick from is app version. And so I'm going to choose app version here. What you'll notice when you drop down on the list of available versions are going to be versions that are going to be visible to Adapty, to the SDK. So in this case, we haven't released the updated version of the app that supports web payment flows, and therefore 1.1, the one that we intend to use, is not available in the list. That may very well be true for you as well, and if that's the case, you can get around that by just simply going to the app version choice here on the left and choosing the little pencil that lets you create a custom attribute. And when you do that, you can add a new value, which is going to be in this case, for my app, we're talking about Movie Mania, 1.1. You'd choose whatever next version you intend to release that's going to support this, and then hit save. And now you have custom versions you can pick from as well. So now we can pick 1.1. And then again, what this is doing is it's limiting it to country United States, right? So we're only letting US people see this paywall. Only people who are on iOS or iPadOS, and then only people who have the version 1.1 or better installed of our application. and that ensures that the web paywall flow will actually work for them. So really that's what all this is about, is just making it so that we're showing it to the right people. I'm going to go ahead and save that segment and then go back over to my placement. You probably are going to end up with a new placement. You might be designing a new paywall and therefore have a new placement for it. Just for purposes of demo, I'm going to go into the one that I have and edit it. And then I'm going to go here to add audience. So in the upper right corner, there's an add audience choice, and it says your audience that you can pick from are the audiences that you made. So I just have the one that we just made, but you'd be able to pick from multiples if you had them. I'm going to pick US Web Checkout, and then I'm going to say run paywall. And the paywall I'm going to pick is my standard paywall that I've got going. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. So what you can do here is you can have an audience that is specific to, in this case, the web checkout version, right? And then you might have a separate paywall that you've designed that doesn't include the web checkout, but maybe is otherwise mostly the same, perhaps, from a design perspective. And that can then be used for everyone else. So what's really nice about placements is that you can segment the placement into multiple different groups and show one paywall to one segment and one paywall to another segment. And in one configuration, you have the ability to serve different audiences at the same time. So that'd be my advice to you, is to have probably maybe your regular paywall that you use that doesn't include web checkout, and then design a separate one that probably looks somewhat similar with the additional option, and just create an audience to do that segmentation at the placement level. And then with one configuration, you have the ability to serve everybody from the same place. All right, so I've made that change. I'm going to go ahead and save and publish that. And then at this point, we're now ready to test. So we're going to see what changes we need to make in the code of the app itself, and then we'll move on to actually testing. All right, so now we're in the code in Xcode for Movie Mania, and we just need to make a couple of changes in order to be able to test this. So one thing is we're going to go in and change the version like we talked about just briefly a minute ago to a version number that is newer than what we've got, and one that matches what we set inside of Adapty's dashboard. So I'm going to say 1.1 for this new version of Movie Mania. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my Adapty package, and I'm going to update it. So to update it, you're just going to right-click on the package and say Update Package. And the newest version should download and install automatically. So in this case, it's 3.6.1. We did make a small change since we released 3.6. 3.6.0 was the first version that supported web payment flows. 3.6.1 is a small set of small changes after that. Basically, if you're on 3.6.0 or better, you should be fine as far as running web payment flows. So in this case, we're basically done. This final step is optional, but something you can choose to do to make your web experience a little bit more complete and just an overall better experience for your users that are using your application. You can add a button that will return them back into the app. So what you want to do on the final screen of your web paywall flow is to go up here to add in a button, and then you can style it with whatever text you like. I chose return to app. And then for the action, I'm going to choose go to external link on the on press action. And then I'm going to enter in a URL that is a custom URL scheme that I'm going to define in my application to respond to when it is opened on my device. So in this case, it's moviemania : / and then the host is going to be really a variety of choices to take them to deep link them into a specific area of the app. I'm going to take them to the profile to show them that the subscription has finished and that they are now subscribed. The last changes we need to make here in the Xcode project are to handle and respond to that custom URL scheme that we saw in the web paywall flow. So the first thing you want to do is come into your project properties and go into the info tab in the Movie Mania target or whatever your app is called, and go down to URL types and then set up a custom URL type. So the identifier is going to be the same bundle identifier as your app, and then the URL scheme is going to be, again, whatever you like, but probably you want to use either your app name or something similar to make it clear and obvious that this URL scheme kind of belongs to this app. Once you have that defined, we're then going to go into the main app entrance struct of your application, in the case of SwiftUI application, and we're going to respond to those URLs that come in by adding this modifier to our main content view where we're setting up our view to run in the application. On open URL is what you want to add there, and then it's going to pass an URL and allow you to do with that whatever you like. In this case, we're going to set up a deep link model that will handle the processing of that URL, but really you can handle that however you like. The deep link model is pretty straightforward. It just simply defines an enum with the destination of wherever you'd like to go in your application. For this app, we're just setting up profile. So in the init, we pull apart the URL and find the host and associate that with a given enum case, and then define that as our destination. Back in the main, we set up a deep link state property that is optional, and we inject that into our content view. And in the content view, we have a binding to that deep link where we handle that at the end of our view body here in the on change to unwrap that deep link optional and then handle that destination enum with a switch statement. So you can set up multiple destinations of wherever you'd like to go within your application. Again, in this example, we're just having the profile set up for now. So in that case, if profile is what's chosen, then we're going to make sure the paywall is not showing, and we're then going to present the profile to show the user that they've paid for the subscription, that they can continue to use their premium content. And here's a demo of the app in action, linking out to the web for purchase, then deep linking right back into the app to confirm the subscription. Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear what kinds of purchase flows you're building with this. Drop a comment below and let us know.